Today we're discussing hip impingement or FAI of the hip. I will cover all of these topics on the side here today, so stay tuned for the entire video. To understand hip impingement, we have to go to the anatomy here first. The femur is this bone, the pelvis is this bone, and usually the impingement happens right here, which is why a lot of you will feel it in this area of the hip. Now, if we bring the hip up into what we call flexion here, there's a pinch point that happens in the front right around here. Now, there could be overgrowth into the top part, which is called a pincer type, or there can be overgrowth onto part of the femur, which is called the cam type. What causes the bony changes with hip impingement? There are three basic factors. Number one is genetics. Some of you are more prone to having this than others, although we can't blame that entirety. Number two is bony overgrowth that happens during the time when the bones are maturing, such as when you're younger and starting to hit your growth spurts. Number three is your activity level during the time of skeletal maturity. People who are more active have a higher tendency of having bony overgrowth than ones that don't. It's important to note that one overlooked cause of hip impingement is movement compensation. Shifting weight towards the side of impingement is a clear sign of an older injury on the opposite side, which starts the pain cycle. This creates excessive demand, excessive growth, and the impingement. Clinical presentation varies from person to person. Most people will experience it in the front portion of the hip here on one side only, while a smaller fraction will feel it on both sides, and even a smaller percentage will experience SI joint pain or pain into the back of the hip. Diagnosis of the condition oftentimes shows positive X-ray findings of crossover sign. There will be correlated symptoms and signs of the condition as well, such as a typical limp and pain with bringing the knee towards the chest. This is what we call a self-Feder's test that we show on our telehealth sessions. Other activities that can hurt are crossing your legs, walking up and down stairs, running, sprinting, or getting in and out of a car. Pro tip for those of you out there trying to self-diagnose, I urge you not to. Growing pain can be from various types of conditions, such as hip impingement, sports hernia, adductor tendinopathy, tumors, infections, fractures, and many, many more. Other than just pain and the location of pain, what are other clinical signs of hip impingement? Decreased active and passive hip range of motion, reduced hip strength, poor trunk control, which some of you will say core control, inward collapse of the knee with a single leg pattern, excessive anterior tilt of the pelvis, poor single leg balance, and as we already saw, gait and walking abnormalities. This is why a qualified healthcare provider is a big asset to you. Doing telehealth or in person can certainly help. We are licensed in different states. If you're looking for help, we've helped thousands of people with growing pain get better. Our contact is below. The next section you're gonna love because we're covering some of the exercises, regressions, and progressions that you all have been asking for certain muscle groups that are important with hip impingement. Endless research you can search on the internet has showed us that exercises and physiotherapy can help out with hip impingement by changing the biomechanical aspects of it. You won't change the bony structure, that's not what we're trying to do. But we know that anterior pelvic tilt has a strong relationship with it. We also know knee cave and weakness of the hip. So doing exercises can help out to address those problems so it doesn't come back quite as quick as well. The four major regions we should consider with the exercise choices are number one, the glute max, which will get all the glute group. Number two is the anterior chain of the body. Number three is the lateral chain of the body. Number four is the quad group. Now, I'm fully aware I didn't say specific muscles really. It's because the chain is actually much more important. It's part of more advanced rehabilitation. Today, I'm going to show you three progressions of each grouping so you can choose which one works best for you. Remember, get examined first before you try exercises. Before we start, let's cover a couple quick pro tips. Number one, rehab exercise should not be painful. If they are, you need better cues, regressions, or pain management strategies prior to have success. Number two, start with the hardest thing that you can do well. Number three is look for the burn of non-symptomatic tissues, meaning if we start doing squats and you feel your groin, you should actually be feeling your quad. Concentrating the effort and the load of the exercise helps to break the compensation pattern, which is a big part of why people's problem continues. The glute max exercise gets all of the glutes. So don't worry about the glute med and the min and so on. We're going to get all of them with this. The biggest regression to all the glute series is the clamshell. The clamshell is a great one to start with the glute med before we start to get to the glute max. The clamshell, we're going to start on our side, stiffen up your core. and start to move your hip in this fashion. Remember, don't rotate the torso as you go through this, as that puts more of the work into the back than into the glute. One of my favorite exercises is a single leg bridge, and it's the next progression. A single leg bridge helps to decrease the amount of torso movement when we do hip exercises. Doing this hip exercise just like so helps to strengthen the glute max as well as the other glute muscles. The last one is called a Y stance drill, which helps bring all of our glute muscles online while we're actually in a single leg pattern. Keeping good balance as you go through this exercise and making it so your knee does not cave are focal points as you go through. Increase the range of motion as you feel comfortable doing so. Remember, if these exercises don't work for you, that's okay. These are just big stepping stones in the progression. I can't show them all today. If you want specific one-on-one help, our contact is below. We do have telehealth sessions and we're licensed in different states. For the anterior chain muscles, we have the hip flexors, the abs, the adductors, and a little bit of the quads as well. To teach better pelvic position, I normally start people with a posterior pelvic tilt while they're face up like so. This helps them find a posterior tilt because, as I mentioned before, an anterior tilt in excess is what creates a lot of the impingement mechanically as well. Finding a posterior tilt before you go into harder exercises is important. Just smash your back into the floor repetitively to find that pattern. One of my favorite exercises is called a hard style plank. Keeping that posterior tilt, we are going to either look through the tunnel and you'll see daylight between your thighs if you go high enough, or just keep the posterior tilt as you get higher and higher and higher. You should start to feel a lot of your belly work. The next progression is getting to the hands, which is called a buttress plank. We have the same posterior pelvic tilt and we start to work our hands further and further away, almost like into a from the knees Spider-Man push-up or plank, and hold the position. It will also get hard on your belly. For the lateral chain here, we're actually getting the obliques, we're getting some of the hip and the glute muscles, and we're also getting some of the lateral quad. Remember, it's groups that we want, not only in isolation. One of my favorite exercises for this is called a side bridge. A side bridge is very simple. It's a sideways bridge, and the way you would do that is mainly from the elbow, and you would come up into a straight line just as you would with a top part of a bridge or a plank, and then you would sit back as you're sitting deep into a seat. Side planks are the natural progression to it where we extend out into the feet. I like the top foot in front. You can go from the elbow or the hand, but most of the time the elbow is the most comfortable for most people. Finally, getting a side plank off the ground becomes a suitcase carry. Now, for some of you who are wondering, why does carrying a weight back and forth like this even do anything like a side plank? It sounds like you're not carrying it heavy enough. Once you start carrying a heavier weight, you'll start to feel the side of your body lock up just like a side plank. The last group that's important is the quad group. And this is going to be the front side of the thigh right around here, and it's gonna burn like heck for most people. One of my favorite is a low bear, which is from a DNS, dynamic neuromuscular stabilization type of rehabilitation that we like to use here at Performance Place. It's very simple. You make your hands into the shape of a diamond, let your elbows splay a little bit outward, keep your elbows in contact with the ground, toes into the floor, raise the knees off the ground, and sit there and make your quads burn. The next one is going to be wall sits, which a lot of you have already seen before. One mistake I do see with the wall sit is people tend to move their torso too far forward, or they're looking over their knees. It's okay to have the knees past the toes. The last graduated exercise is called a goblet squat. Goblet squats, we typically ask for nearly complete range if the person can tolerate it. We add the weight as a counterbalance so you can actually get to a larger depth to actually challenge more of the quad group. Reps and sets do matter, but reps matter less than you think. We tend to use a perceived rating scale here, meaning 100% is you can't physically do another rep, 0 is you haven't done anything yet. We ask people to go between 60 and 80 of their perceived effort rating for one set. They would take then a 30-second break, do set 2, and then a 30-second break, and then do set 3, and then they would move on to the next exercise. What sports is FAI or hip impingement common with? Normally with active individuals, they can be male or female, usually between their 20s and 40s is very common. Sports that require repeated hip flexion and rotation seem to be a common factor. Sports like hockey, soccer, baseball, football, dance, especially ballet, martial arts, golf, and some events in track and field. Now, those are the textbook people. Remember, if you aren't those types of scenarios, that's okay. You can still have hip impingement and you can still recover from it. We've seen many people at our facility who aren't exactly these textbook versions, but they also have hip impingement. Differential diagnosis in simple terms is what else could it be? I'll tell you the top 3 here, but remember it could be a lot of other things too. Hip flexor overuse, sports hernias, and adductor tendinopathies are all super common reasons for groin pain as well. Let's recap a couple fine points here. Hip impingement is usually treated with non-surgical methods. Non-surgical methods are a preferred treatment for hip impingement. This may include stretching, strengthening, physiotherapy, or lifestyle modifications. Surgery is oftentimes a very last resort. More videos about hip impingement are right in the corner. Click on that and take advantage of all the free information we have on YouTube. Remember, if you're struggling with this and you want to streamline things, a lot of people do get better on their own, but it does take a little bit more time than working with the provider. So if you want a cheat code, we can be your cheat code here. Reach out to us. We've helped thousands of people with hip impingement with our telehealth platform, with our specialized system that we do with hip impingement. Take care. See you next time.